better than what you get in Glendale. Bridge over. Oh! I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in 1896, and I went to public schools, and I eventually got a law degree. And during World War I proudly served as a pirate. I proudly served as a drink. I proudly served as a private and then a second lieutenant in the Field Artillery Division. You know what my job was? Most of the time I was up in an observation room over the battlefield directing our artillery fire. I did not consider that to be a safe battle position, being above the battle in a big helium balloon. No, I'd rather be down on the ground behind the fortified artillery. You know, after the war, I came back to Beacon, had miscellaneous jobs. I even worked for my brother's bakery, Dirksentalks bakery. And in 1926, I had my first political career job. I was elected to the Beacon City Council. Well, after that, I served 8 terms of Congress, took a little break for a while, and then came back and spent the rest of my life in the Senate, in the United States Senate. Now, well, I was in Congress and saw that some politicians would use astrologers or astrology to plot what they were going to do in their career. Actually, I found that kind of mysterious, but yet enticing. I took it up as a hobby, because I needed all the help I could get for my career. I already served 1 term as a congressman. And it turns out that in 1938, I corresponded with a famous astrologist. Boy, no more. Stop me. But anyway, so I wrote to an astrologer. So I wrote to an astrologer, and his name was George E. Jordan Jr. Oh, that kind of rolls right off your tongue, George E. Jordan Jr. Well, anyway, what Jordan would do for $10, you send him a question, and he'd give you an answer on just about anything. Well, he took my horoscope and he laid it all out. He looked at the way the planets and everything were going and where they are. And he said that I'd be a successful congressman. Okay? But I need to be elected for another term. So Jordan said that he could take, if I brought him the birth information of my competitors, my opponents, he could tell me who's got the better influences and who had a better chance of winning the race. Well, that term I was reelected. But then in 1939, I corresponded with Jordan again. And again, he said that I'd make a good congressman, but I had aspirations for being a governor. Jordan, he wrote back, no, governor, I wouldn't go there, but I'd stay with being a congressman right now. He said, if you were in a campaign to be a governor, you would not be able to use your natural charismatic personality. Well, I wound up continuing as a congressman. Now, Jordan did say some good things, too. He said that my horoscope was federal from the start to the finish, and that there was a good chance that after an apprenticeship in Congress that I could go for the position of being the president. He also cautioned me. He said, don't trust any women to help you in your career. Then he said, now this was in 1930, but then he said that the 1940s were going to be rough years. So in 1939, that was pretty obvious. So I sent him the information, the birth information for 6 of my, what I thought were opponents. And he came back and said that only one was a worthy opponent to be concerned about. Now, back then in the 30s, astrology was a lot more common than it is now. And a lot of politicians found out that the path of Uranus, what that planet does, was very important for elections, of whether you win or lose an election, in both local and federal elections. So, what you see is a lot of politicians are fighting to head up Uranus political programs. Head up Uranus political programs. Here, here. I need a cigarette. Oh, yeah. Don't tell Luella. Oh, I promised Luella that I quit. No, I knew what I promised. I promised that I would not go out and buy a carton of cigarettes. I didn't say that I was going to borrow them from somebody, steal them. So this is all right. Of course, this is the thing that killed me, I think. But anyway, let me. Just give me a second here. You can late.
Excuse me, Senator. Since you're passing, it is now illegal to smoke inside.
Well, I didn't know the fire marshal was going to be here. Well, yeah, are you sure, even if you're an old ghostly senator like myself?
Absolutely.
You know, if I was to get back in Congress, I'd make a bill against this. Let me put this back in here. You know, astrology was okay, it was interesting, but I couldn't put my faith in it. I was a religious guy, and so I put my faith in God. I'm going to tell you a story that shows how much faith I had. It was 1947, I was giving a lecture over at Everett University, and all of a sudden I could barely see. It was like cobwebs were in front of my eyes. And I thought the condition would only last for a short time, but no, it lasted for weeks. And eventually I went to a doctor who was a specialist in eyes, and they told me that my right eye was the problem. It was a long name of a disease, but they said that it might be malignant. Boy, I had a lot of ailments, but I did not want to lose my eyesight. So they said, we can give you some treatment, which they did, but it did not work. And when I came out after the treatment, I went to more physicians, more doctors, all over the area. And they said, the best thing you can do, because we don't know if it's malignant or not, the best thing you can do is to remove the eye. No, I didn't want to do that. I did not want to do that. So they told me to see a specialist, the best one from California. He was going to be at Johns Hopkins Memorial Hospital. And he was only going to be there for a short time, so I had to make tracks to get over there. And he already had said that he believes the right move would be to remove the eye. So I took a train to where he was. And on that train, I knelt down and I prayed to God. And when I got off of that train, I was going to keep both eyes and trust in God. Well, when I got to the doctor in the hospital there, he was all huffy and puffy, and I told him no, I was going to keep both eyes. I consulted another physician on the train ride over. He said, another physician that's better than me, more an expert? I said, yeah. I said, yes. He said, no, you're making a mistake. Remove the eye. But I didn't. I came home, got with Luella. I stopped being in Congress. I stopped running for Congress for a few years. And I lived a healthy life. We lived in privacy. In 1950, I could see well enough to run as a senator, and I spent the rest of my life in the United States Senate. You know, it's a common urge to want to see the future. And there's a lot of mysterious things that happen in the universe that make you think that you can see the future. Oh yeah, astrology is one thing. But there's another item, another thing. I'm going to break comet that flew over the northern states of the United States, 1860s, right before the Civil War. And this comet flies across, and all the people are looking at it there. So they said this was an omen. There's bad things coming our way. Yes, there was. And then the comet seemed to split. And people said, oh, that shows that the United States were going to split between North and South. Which we did. And then Civil War came, and our president was none other than Abraham Lincoln. Oh, he was my idol. Lincoln and I had a lot in common. One, we represented the same districts when we first started out in politics. Two, we both lost a parent when we were young, very young. And three, we were both heavily involved in the civil rights movement. It was like bookends. Lincoln was at the beginning, and I was at the end. Oh, boy. If only I could ask Lincoln some questions. I'd ask him, how did he get his stamina to survive the Civil War? Why did he run for presidency in such a difficult time? What would he have done for his second term? But I'd never be able to ask Lincoln, or would I? While I was in Congress, there were frequent sightings of Lincoln's spirit, or something resembling Lincoln, wandering the White House. Maybe I'd bump into him. Maybe I'd be like, here's a story of Queen Wilhelmina from the Netherlands. She stayed at the White House during that period. She was sleeping. And in the middle of the night, all of a sudden she hears a knocking on her door. Well, she opened the door, lo and behold, she saw Abraham Lincoln standing there, top of hat and all. She fainted. When she woke up, the apparition was gone. And I wondered if we did the same thing. I mean, if I bumped into Lincoln, his ghost, would I faint? Or would I ask him questions? Lincoln, I don't know if he wanted to see the future, but I do know that many people thought that he dreamt of his assassination. There's a few famous dreams, but one I would relate here. It was after a hard day of work, Lincoln went to the bed and fell asleep quickly. Soon he was dreaming, he dreamt that everything was real still around him. And all of a sudden he heard weeping, crying. And it wasn't in the room. He went outside of his room and he went down. This is all in the train. But he went downstairs and he started walking down the halls. He couldn't see any people. Everybody was invisible, it must be. But he kept walking. He kept walking towards the sign of the crying, the sound of the crying. As he walked all the way to the east room. And there inside that room were the people, the mourners. They were standing around the coffin. And in that coffin was a man, and he had a black cloth over his face so you couldn't tell who it was. And there were soldiers guarding the coffin. Lincoln walked up to one of the guards and asked, who would that be? Who is that person? And he told Lincoln, the president, sir, he was assassinated. Now, that wasn't the first time that Lincoln had a premonition about his death. In the 1860s, while he was still here in Illinois, he looked in the mirror and saw two images of his face. One image was crystal clear, the other image was very vague, mostly. People translated that to mean that he would be elected for the first term and live through it. The second term, he would be elected and would not make it to the end. Oh, there's all kinds of stories about Lincoln's spirit in the White House. Even his bodyguards had stories about Lincoln. But the one that I'd like to relate here now was his bodyguard, Colonel Crook. On the day of Lincoln's assassination, he did not want to go to the theater, and Crook thought this was unusual because Lincoln loved the theater. He always wanted to go to the theater. Not this day. And Crook remembers that when he parted ways with Lincoln that day, Lincoln turned to him and said, goodbye, Crook. He usually said, good night, Crook. Well, there's one more dream I want to tell you about. And this is a dream, the day of his assassination, Lincoln pulled his cabinet together. He told them of a dream that he's had before, the same dream. And he's had it many times. It usually is before a major event, like in the Civil War, maybe a battle. Often it's associated with something positive, something good happening. But he said he had it that morning. And unfortunately, if anything, it was a sign of a tragedy. Because President Abraham Lincoln was shot in the back of the head on April 15, 1865, by a Southern sympathizer, John Wilkes Booth. He died the next day. Now I'm going to tell you what that dream was. The President said he was in a vessel. And he couldn't define the vessel. He didn't know whether it was a sailboat or whatever, but he was in a vessel in the water. And they were moving quickly, rapidly, towards the shoreline. Now he couldn't define the vessel he was in, nor could he define what the shoreline there was. But he was just moving rapidly towards that shoreline. And some reports say that Lincoln said that vessel was in dark water. Well, how do I go back? I feel a lot more moment there. You know, I think you've had enough stories here from all of us that will. I'm going to find Willa, and we're going to take a stroll along the river. We're going to show that we don't care about this dark, murky water curse thing. But before I do that, before I take Willa and go out there, I'm going to give you a miracle. That I picked this up. You see, every day I pick a flower, especially miracle, and give it to my wife Willa. So, I know that some of the spirits are going to join us in our walk along the river. If you'd like to join us,